Court will recall 20 CR 1358, People versus Leticia Stauch. Record should reflect the jury has the courtroom. When we took our break, we were in the midst of the testimony of Dr. Lewis. That's where we will resume. Fellini.
Yes, Dr. Lewis, did that summary refresh your recollection at all towards what the persona Maria had related to you?
Yes, somewhat.
What did Maria relate to you?
What is written here is what she said.
Okay. Well, do you recall independently that?
I beg your pardon.
Do you have? Does that refresh your recollection?
What comes to me as I read this is that the reason that I can't cite chapter and verses, it is wildly psychotic. It is incoherent. It is
non-responsive.
Well,
if you can relate what Maria told you, I think was the question. That's what you need to do.
And now, so let me rephrase that then, Dr. Lewis. If you can't recall the exact specifics of what she said, what can you recall about the way in which she was presenting?
Yes, I can't recall the exact specifics because it is disorganized and confused and difficult to remember. But I recall her kind of reassociating all over. And she talks about her grandmother and family shooting things out the window and always needed people to guard funerals. That it had a chaotic quality, and it happened shortly after, as I recall it, shortly after I became aware of her seeming to move into her Maria persona and her more aggressive, more scary persona, and then it is just rambling and doesn't make sense and incoherent or psychotic.
Now, in fairness, there were other things that you would have liked to have done in your examination. Could you talk a little bit about those? About as far as like an MRI or an EEG?
Right.
Why would you like those to have been done?
There were aspects of her memory, her behaviors, her descriptions that are consistent with certain kinds of brain damage. And for example, there are certain things that are so close in terms of dissociation and neurologic impairment and let's say what are called psychomotor seizures, where prior to a confused state or prior to a state where you are aggressive and moving kind of automatically but violently, prior to this, there's often a state of wooziness and dizziness, which, as I recall, she described. And following these kinds of episodes, the individual, and this is with what are called complex partial seizures, but also it can be with dissociation, the person does not have any memory of what occurred. First, there is what is called an aura. Then things happen. Very often they can be aggressive things, they can be repetitive things, and subsequent to that, the person does not remember them or remembers them in a confused fashion. And the reason that I would like very much to have been able to investigate that is, if it were, let's say if we were able to get the electroencephalograms that I would like to have had done, if indeed you saw that at a certain point, what were normal electrical activity changed, and the rhythm changed, and things were off and were not the way we normally think. And then it ceased. If you could combine that, because that would have been signs of abnormal brain activity. And then it would have been very possible, very likely, that during the time at which Maria or an entity of Leticia, whatever it be, that during this time when the child was being stabbed, that her brain was in an altered state, and that there is no way in hell that she could have stopped what she was doing. And the other thing is, she would not remember it. And a classic part of Maria's situation is she doesn't remember what happened. I'm not even convinced she knows she did it, and she certainly can give a variety of what you've called like confabulations, just kind of wild stories where her head just goes in different directions. I think that if she could have documented this, there is treatment for it. Whereas we're in a lot more trouble when we're dealing only with a dissociative identity disorder. That's a very tough one to treat. It takes a certain amount of experience, talent, what have you, and investment for a long period of time. So that it matters if you find out that this is what's going on in the brain and you can target it with something to improve it, you're going to see a difference in her whole behavior.
And it was frustrating to you that I wasn't able to line that up for us, correct?
Your relevance.
Overruled.
It was frustrating that I wasn't able to make the EEG happen for you, correct?
More than frustrating.
And just so that the jury knows, you're not here out of the goodness of your heart. You're being paid for your time.
Not yet, but I hope so.
Okay. You're being paid by the state agency that I work for.
In theory.
In theory, hopefully. And the agreement is to be paid at $300 an hour.
I thought it was $350 an hour.
Okay. I'll have to talk with my supervisors about that. But that's a discount from what you would normally charge, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Despite not having the EEG or the MRI, in your report, you indicated that Ms. Stauch was one of the most mentally ill people you'd ever come across.
Yes. The most complex.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes. The more I study her and the more I remember what happened and go over it, she has such a variety of different signs, symptoms, and behaviors. She has many of the signs, symptoms, behaviors of a dissociative identity disorder. She also, if you follow the material, as you recall, I could not remember it clearly. If you follow the parts that I couldn't remember, they are confused. They make no sense. They are psychotic. They're incomprehensible by an ordinary human being. And if they were to be read aloud to you, you would not make head or tail of them. So that I find this complicated. And it would have helped me if I could have at least eliminated or included a particular central nervous system dysfunction that I could deal with. It's always fun for a doctor to be able to treat and to be able to make something better. And so far we're not able to do that.
I mean, the defense did the right thing. You get your bad facts out there. Yes, this is an expert we're paying. Kind of funny they hadn't really agreed on the rate, but I think it was a smart way that they handled it, Michael, for the jury to hear. Yeah, we're paying her.
Yeah, put it in front of them, and clearly made the point that it's a discounted rate.
Yes.
So you're not in here just for the money. And we know that's often a problem with public defenders. He's a public defender. You don't have the same money as a private attorney to do these things. So, I'm glad she decided to come in. This is a case that obviously was important to her.
Yeah, and that rate is low, right? Let's just admit that up front.